Welcome to today's Global Connections program. I'm Bill Miller. How prevalent is genocide in many areas of the world? What is one United Nations office doing to reduce the possibility of genocide? We'll be back in just a moment to talk about this and other important issues. Welcome back to our program. Today we're taking a look at genocide. It seems as though every day we pick up the newspapers and read where there's possibly genocide taking place in some part of the world. My guest today is someone who's very involved and knows the issue very well. My guest today is the Undersecretary General Adama Dieng. Mr. Dieng of Senegal is the Special Advisor of the Secretary General on the Prevention of Genocide. Mr. Dieng is a former board member of the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance and a former registrar of the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. He has also contributed to the establishment of several non-governmental organizations in Africa. He served as the former Secretary General of the International Commission of Jurists, and he served as the UN Independent Expert for Haiti. Undersecretary Dieng, welcome to today's Global Connections program.
Thank you for your invitation.
I appreciate you being with me today. This is a horrific problem in various areas of the world, genocide, but we're going to get into it in just a minute. But let's talk a little bit about your office. What do you do? When was your office established and why was it established?
Well, the Special Advice on the Prevention of Genocide mandate was established in 2004. And it might be worth to remind people that this office was established following an assessment and introspection by the United Nations of the failure of the international community to protect the people in Rwanda in 1994, the people in Srebrenica in 1995. In those 2 years, the world witnessed two genocides. And at the request of the Security Council, the Secretary General of the United Nations decided to establish this mandate so as to prevent the occurrence of genocide in the future.
Mm-hmm. And as I recalled, in 1948 there was a convention on the prevention of crimes and genocide. It has a very long title, but this is the 68th anniversary of it this year. What was the substance of that being developed, that genocidal convention in 1948, especially 3 years after the end of World War II, where we saw 60 million people died, the attempted annihilation of the Jewish people in many areas of Europe, Western Europe and Eastern Europe?
Well, it is true that on the 9th of December 1948, 65 years today. In fact, we are going to commemorate the 65th anniversary as a result of a campaign led by Polish lawyer Raphael Lemkin. The international community, drawing also the lessons of the Holocaust, decided to move and to draft this important instrument, which was adopted 1 day before the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was on 10th of December. But I think what is extremely important is that at that time, the world acknowledged also its failure, because on the eyes of the world, 6 million Jews were killed. And we remember what is named the final solution. I visited Birkenau, I visited Auschwitz, and I would invite whoever has the possibility to visit that place to do so. And I think the Genocide Convention is an instrument which has to be ratified by every state As of today, 144 states have ratified, and it is our intention to call for a universal ratification of this important instrument. And I think the world owes a lot to Raphael Lemkin. But despite the fact that at that time, following the Second World War, we said never again. Unfortunately, we witnessed it in 1994, in 1995, and we witnessed it also in Darfur, Sudan. And that is my hope that through my office, the world will never again witness another genocide.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned Rwanda, South Sudan, the Balkans, and as we go through this, we'll factor those in. Those are memorable for the wrong reasons, unfortunately, but we do remember them, the large number of us do anyway. But before we go too far, let me ask you, we hear terms like genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. Sometimes we use them interchangeably, we who are not experts in this area. How do you define them, just very briefly, genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity?
Well, genocide, you have to realize that it concerns a protected, I would say, limited groups. We are talking about the intent to destroy, whole or in part, a group based on its nationality, race, ethnic, or religion. So those four elements make it. So which means that, for instance, in the case of Rwanda, to illustrate, a group was targeted simply because of its belonging to the Tutsi community. Mm-hmm. And during 100 days, those about 1 million Tutsis were killed. So the aim was to exterminate the entire Tutsi population, and that make it a genocide. While when we talk about crimes against humanity, here we are talking about a widespread, systematic killings, but without the intent to destroy a specific group. And then when we talk about war crime, here we are talking about violations of rules pertaining to the Geneva 1949 Convention, what we known as the Geneva Convention. As you know, following the Second World War, the world also met to say, how can we humanize the war, make it possible? So therefore, willful killing, torture, enslavement, all those type of things can become as war crime. And the fact also, for instance, of targeting either a mosque or a church during the war specifically, or targeting a hospital, can be a war crime. So you see the differences. But coming back to the genocide, we have to simply remember that we are talking about the category of those four elements: race, national, ethnic, and religious.
Mm-hmm. And now, if our viewers would like more information, and hopefully they will, they can go to your website at www.un.org/prevent-genocide/advisor, or they could probably just Google Office of Genocide at the UN and come up and be moved immediately to your website. And of course, you have a lot of good information on there about this and very important topic, and one that we all need to learn much more about. Well, let's talk a little bit about your office as far as your four functions. One is to collect existing information about the potential of genocide. How do you do that? And is there an example of something going on today in some particular area where you're collecting this information with the hopes of preventing genocide, or at least reducing it if it's underway?
Well, I mean, we do collect this information from within the United Nations system to start
within the system.
Within the system, with all the agencies, on a daily basis, we receive their early warning reports. But we also compile information from other sources, including non-governmental organization, including all type of civil society. And also we do consult the media, what is going on every day. So what we do, once we compile those information on a weekly basis. We do a report, internal. We analyze, of course, those information. We double check, and I can tell, for instance, as of today, we have about 50 countries on our list. But let me immediately say that doesn't mean that in 50 countries genocide may occur. It's simply that indicate that there is one risk factor out of, for the time being, 8 risk factors contained in our framework of analysis, which in fact I'm reviewing right now to include new elements pertaining to religion. Because I realize for the time I have been in this office that there is a rise of religious tension around the world. I mean, a community like the Buddhist community, which was perceived as a non-violent community, unfortunately we have been witnessing violence in Myanmar, where even monks were involved in serious crimes. So that is one of the reasons why I'm reviewing this framework of analysis, and we may end having maybe 10 or 11 risk factors. But of course, there is a handful states which are on our red box. Those states, we are following it very, very closely, and the last one in that box is Central African Republic.
And once, well, you say you liaison now, or you tie into the United Nations system. Do you work with UN agencies like peacekeeping missions, with the UN High Commission for Refugees, UN Children's Fund, the World Food Program, the ones that are on the ground and working every day in dangerous areas like Syria or Central African Republic? Are those your main partners there?
Absolutely. We do work with all those agencies. And as a matter of fact, we'll talk about it if you like when we come to the responsibility to protect. As you may know, there is a special advisor of the Secretary General on the responsibility to protect who works under my overall guidance, and whose role is right now also to see how to better mainstream within the United Nations system. Because at the end of the day, if you take, for instance, the peacekeeping operation and the responsibility to protect, we may find some link. When you take the OCHA, the humanitarian, and I have had a discussion with Valerie Amos, who is my colleague in charge of that department, we did agree that there is a complementarity between my mandate and her mandate. Of course, she is dealing with the protection of civilians, providing humanitarian assistance. I'm dealing more with the prevention of atrocity crimes. And when I say atrocity crimes, I'm referring here to genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and ethnic cleansing. To illustrate, both of us are very much concerned about the situation in Syria. In Syria, she is trying to see how to make sure that humanitarian assistance reach the population who are in need. And unfortunately, both camps, both the rebels and the Assad regime have been obstructing access to humanitarian assistance, and hopefully even a bit late, the Security Council last October 2nd finally did issue a statement, and it is our hope that those parties in conflict in Syria will abide to international humanitarian law, would make it an obligation to facilitate the access for humanitarian assistance. While my concern in Syria will relate to, for instance, what may happen to the people in that country. Is there a risk that tomorrow they may be targeted? Let's say a particular community, the Sunni, may become a target, for instance, of the Alawite, to which Assad belongs, or the Alawite becoming the target of the Sunni. So therefore that group, as I was saying earlier, because of the religion, need to be protected. And what shall we do to prevent tomorrow the occurrence of crimes based on religion?
Well, you're watching Global Connections Television, which is an independently produced program. The opinions expressed on Global Connections are solely those of the moderator and his guests. Today we're taking a look at genocide and one office in the United Nations that's working to prevent or eliminate genocide. My guest today is an expert in this area. My guest today is the Undersecretary General, Mr. Adama Dieng of Senegal, who is the Special Advisor of the Secretary General on the Prevention of Genocide. Mr. Dieng, we're talking about genocide. You were focusing on Syria, and of course that's really a devastating situation, one we read about every day in the newspapers. Let's bring this, you mentioned R2P, the responsibility to protect. We already started talking about that to some degree. Tie that in a little more to what's going on in Syria and how difficult it is to really protect. I mean, we want to do that. We have that responsibility. In 2005, I guess the United Nations said that's what we should be doing. The nations of the world said we should be doing it, but it is a challenge to do it. But tie that into what's happening in Syria.
Well, let's first remind people that in 2005, the world leaders committed that they will no longer sit down and allow people to be not protected when they may become victim of atrocity crimes. And in that regard, an important document was adopted by all heads of state and government. That is this Outcome Document Summit, which contained two important paragraphs, paragraph 138 and 139, which made it clear that the primary responsibility to protect population at risk lies with the state. But when the state is not able to protect its own population, that state has the obligation to ask other states, starting with the neighboring countries, to come and rescue, to help that state to protect. But if the state definitely fails to protect the population, the international community has to come and protect those people who are at risk. And there are three pillars. So the second pillar, where the international community provides the assistance, and the third pillar is the pillar in which a military intervention can be envisaged on a case by case. And on a case by case was mentioned clearly in the document. And of course, it is no surprise because we do know that a military intervention cannot occur unless the Security Council authorizes it. And therefore, we have also to admit that you cannot expect the Security Council to be consistent on this type of issues. You have national interests, economic interests, whatever. And that is where I may say, personally, I was a bit frustrated in the sense that already in March 2011, my office already stated that crimes against humanity were committed in Syria. No action was taken. So the Security Council failed to pass a single resolution on the situation in Syria. Hopefully, now we are seeing, I hope, the end of the tunnel, and I hope that the Geneva Conference will bear fruits when it takes place in a couple of weeks. And it is my sincere hope that it will be possible to bring the people of Syria together to reconcile with themselves and to rebuild that country. It took almost a quarter century to rebuild Lebanon, and I'm afraid it might require certainly half a century to rebuild Syria. And shall we say that the international community has again failed in its responsibility to protect? It might be a severe judgment to pass, but I may admit that we are not far from making such an acknowledgement. But let's give the international community this last chance to show that it really cares about the people.
Exactly. And of course, on the positive side, there is, well, now we do see the Organization for the Prevention of Chemical Weapons is hopefully dismantling the chemical weapons in Syria. The UN agencies are on the ground, the World Food Program, the High Commission for Refugees, different ones like that, UN Children's Fund, and they're providing assistance. but the battles still rage, and that's the point. The civil war is still underway, and ultimately the Syrians are going to have to come to the table to agree on brokering some type of peace accord and living in peace with one another if we're ever going to see the end of it. But you're right, it is a very difficult situation, and you do have many interests, competing interests, that at times impede a united front to deal with a particular problem. One you mentioned earlier before, and one we heard about for many years, was Darfur. We saw the tragedy that had taken place in Darfur. The Janjaweed and many of the folks who were living in that area were constantly killing one another. What is the situation today? I remember years ago, George Clooney, the famous American actor, and his father, Nick Clooney, went over and did a journey to Darfur. They did really a documentary on it, and we haven't read much about it lately. Have things gotten much more peaceful there, or is there starting to be resentment, or where are we in Darfur?
Well, I mean, there has been, of course, some progress. Unfortunately, there are other areas where in Sudan we are extremely concerned. If you take today the situation in the Nuba Mountain, where the Sudan army is still conducting aerial bombardment, I think something needs to be done. And the same situation also if you go to the Blue Nile. So that is to say that efforts need to be done. We should not close our eyes on what is happening in that part of Africa. It is true that the African Union, which is the continental organization, is doing a lot. I mean, thanks to the mediation efforts of the former president of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki, thanks also to the efforts by the United Nations, because you know there was a joint mission, there is a joint mission, UNAMID, which is a mission for Darfur. Efforts are being made, definitely. And unfortunately, there are time to time operations. Just recently, some of our colleague peacekeepers were killed. I'm referring to the most recent one, the 3 gendarmes from Senegal. So the UN is paying also a price, but that is our life. We have to fight to make this world a better place. We have to fight for peace. This organization has been created, in fact, to make sure that peace and security prevail around the world. But we need to still continue to follow. We should not forget the Darfur crisis. It's not completely solved.
It's still with us, and we need to focus on it. We certainly do. One of the most horrific genocides that ever took place was in Rwanda, and we talked about that a little bit earlier. And as I recall, something like 800,000 to 1 million people were killed, mostly Tutsis, but some Hutus also in that,
some
in
Hutu
that
moderates,
carnage exactly that took place. A lot of people remember that, and a lot of the foreign policy observers believe that had the nations come together on that, and that, I guess this contributed to the responsibility to protect discussion that took place in 2005. But I remember the former Secretary General Boutros Ghali, who basically begged countries to put up troops, to donate funds, to provide a small peacekeeping mission to go into Rwanda, although there had been one there earlier, but they pulled it out. But a lot of people believe that had that peacekeeping mission been put together, that a large part of this carnage could have been avoided. Maybe not all of it. There certainly would have been killings taking place, but certainly not to the tune of 1 million people. Do you feel that that really could have played a major role in helping to prevent that?
Well, if I take what is happening today in the eastern part of Congo, DRC, where an intervention brigade was put in place with the concurrence of the African Union, which helped, because you have Tanzanian forces, Mozambican, etc. This brigade of intervention did help really to bring an end the violence which was going on with the M23. And the next step will be also to engage a battle with the other forces, FDLR, etc. So which means that here is force which with the UN support fighting those people who are committing the atrocities. And it is true that such things, if this was done during the time of UNAMIR in Rwanda, if General Dallaire was given the instruction to fight, maybe one could have stopped the genocide. And I can say that there is one captain who was a member of the UNAMIR and who died in the field in Rwanda simply because he was trying to save lives. And he saved hundreds of lives, but at the end he received a bullet. And he is today a hero in Rwanda. His name is Captain Baijan, and he has received even, I think, a UN prize. After his death.
Yes, yes. And it's amazing the difference that one person can make.
Absolutely.
It is absolutely amazing. And this is something that even if we're not reading about genocide on the front pages of the newspapers around the world or in the United States or whatever, we still need to learn much more about this because it's going on. And we think, well, it's so far away, it doesn't affect us, but it really does. It affects us as human beings, but it can also affect us over the long run too, because when areas fall into disarray, you have economic and political dislocations. But this is an important topic, Mr. Adama Dieng, we need to learn more about. I want to thank you so very much for a very interesting and a very informative program.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Bill Miller. Thank you for joining us on today's Global Connections program.